In our timeline, Rome collapsed in 476 AD. The Western Roman Empire, the greatest civilization the world had ever seen, crumbled under the weight of barbarian invasions, economic collapse, and internal decay. But in another reality, it never fell, and that world looks nothing like ours. I'm not talking about a world where Rome just survives a few more decades. I'm talking about a timeline where the Roman Empire adapts, evolves, and becomes the dominant superpower for the next 2,500 years, where Latin is still the global language, where Roman law governs every continent, where the Senate still meets. But instead of debating border disputes with Gaul, they're negotiating Mars colonization rights. This isn't fantasy. Historians and alternate history experts have mapped out exactly how this could have happened. And the deeper you go into this timeline, the more you realize everything we take for granted about our world, it all hinged on Rome falling. So let's rewind to the moment it all went wrong. Or in this case, the moment it went right. 476 AD, the city of Rome. Germanic warlord Odoacer has just deposed the last Western Roman emperor, a teenager named Romulus Augustulus. In our timeline, this is the end. Rome falls. The Dark Ages begin. But what if Romulus Augustulus wasn't just a puppet emperor? What if he had one loyal, brilliant general? Let's call him Marcus Aurelius Maximus, a fictional composite of the kind of leader Rome desperately needed. A man who understood that Rome's problem wasn't military strength. It was economic stagnation, political corruption, and a refusal to adapt. In this timeline, Maximus doesn't just defend Rome, he reforms it. He does three things that change history forever. First, he federalizes the barbarian tribes. Instead of fighting them, he offers them citizenship, land, and seats in the Senate. The Goths, Vandals, and Franks, they become Romans, not subjects, partners. Second, he decentralizes power. Rome's problem was trying to govern a massive empire from one city. Maximus creates regional capitals, Mediolanum in the north, Carthage in Africa, Constantinople in the east. Each has autonomy but answers to the Senate. Third, he invests in infrastructure and education. Instead of spending gold on mercenaries, he rebuilds the roads, aqueducts, and schools. He reopens the libraries that were being abandoned. He funds engineers, not just soldiers. Within one generation, Rome stabilizes. Within 2 generations, it thrives. By 550 AD, while our timeline is drowning in chaos, this Rome is entering a golden age. Now let's jump forward to the year 800 AD. In our world, this is when Charlemagne is crowned Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, a fractured, quasi-religious attempt to revive Roman glory in medieval Europe. But in this timeline, there's no Charlemagne, because Rome never left. And here's where things get interesting. Without the collapse of centralized knowledge, there is no Dark Ages. Think about what the Dark Ages actually were. A period where literacy plummeted, scientific progress halted, and most technological advancements from the classical era were forgotten. Why? Because when Rome fell, so did its educational system. Its libraries, its funding for research. But in a timeline where Rome never falls, knowledge compounds. By the year 900, Roman engineers have refined aqueduct systems to the point where every major city has running water and primitive sewage treatment. Islamic scholars in Roman-controlled North Africa are collaborating with Greek philosophers in Constantinople and Celtic engineers in Britannia. The printing press, invented in 950 AD 500, years ahead of schedule at the Imperial Library of Alexandria, which in this timeline was never burned. Gunpowder, perfected by 1100 not by accident, but through systematic experimentation, funded by the Roman military. The Renaissance, that explosion of art, science, and philosophy we credit with pulling Europe out of the Middle Ages, it happens in 1200 AD, not because of a rediscovery of lost Roman texts, but because Rome never stopped producing them. Leonardo da Vinci, in this timeline, he's not a lone genius. He's one of hundreds of state-funded inventors working in imperial workshops. By 1300 AD, Rome has steam power. Let that sink in. While our timeline is still building castles and fighting with swords, this Rome has early locomotives transporting goods across the empire. Fast forward to 1700. In our world, Europe is fragmenting into nation-states. The British Empire is rising, the age of exploration. has connected the world through colonization and exploitation. But in the Roman timeline, there was no age of exploration. Why would there be? Rome already controlled the known world. By 1700, the Roman Empire spanned 6 continents. Its territories include all of Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, and significant portions of Asia after centuries of trade and gradual expansion. The Americas, discovered and colonized by Roman expeditions in 1350, over a century before Columbus. The indigenous populations aren't wiped out by disease and conquest in the same way, because Roman policy, refined over 1,000 years of integrating diverse peoples, focuses on assimilation and trade rather than extermination. By 1800, Rome is industrializing at a pace that makes the British Industrial Revolution look slow. Factories powered by steam engines line the Tiber. Railways connect Lisboa to Byzantium. The Roman Navy, still the largest in the world, has ironclad warships patrolling every ocean. And here's the fascinating part. There is no World War I, no World War II. Why? Because there are no competing empires. There's just Rome. Global conflicts don't happen when one government controls global infrastructure, trade, and military power. But that doesn't mean it's peaceful. Internal conflicts? Constantly. Provincial uprisings? Every few decades. Civil wars when the Senate deadlocks on succession? Absolutely. But the scale is different. These aren't existential wars that kill millions. They're political struggles within a system that's learned to absorb and adapt. By 1950, Rome has nuclear weapons. Not because they fought a world war to develop them, but because Roman scientists have been researching atomic theory for decades in state-funded labs. By 1969, the year we landed on the moon, Rome has already established lunar colony Prima. And by 1987, the first Roman spacecraft lands on Mars. The colony is named Nova Roma. Its flag bears the eagle and SPQR. So what does the year 2025 look like in this timeline? Imagine walking through the streets of Rome, not the ancient ruins we know, the living, thriving capital of a government that's been operating continuously for 2,500 years. The Colosseum isn't a tourist attraction. It's a cultural center where holographic gladiator reenactments play for school children learning history. The Forum isn't empty marble. It's a plaza surrounded by government buildings, where senators debate climate, policy, and space exploration budgets. You wouldn't speak English. You'd speak Latin, or more accurately, modern Latin, which has evolved the way English evolved from Old English. Maybe you'd also speak Mandarin, because China and Rome have been trading partners and occasional rivals for over 2,500 years. The internet? It exists, but it's called the Rete Universalis, and it was developed at the Imperial Technical Institute in Constantinople in 1991. Your smartphone? Designed in Nova Roma on Mars, assembled in Roman factories in former Germania, running software coded in a language descended from Latin. The global reserve currency isn't the dollar, it's the solidus, a digital currency backed by the Roman Central Bank, which has been regulating economies for over 2 millennia. On the surface, this world is more advanced than ours. They reached space earlier. They have more unified global infrastructure. They never wasted a century on world wars. But dig deeper and cracks start to show. Because here's what we don't talk about when we romanticize Rome. A government that's ruled for 2,500 years has had 2,500 years to perfect control. In this timeline, the concept of democracy as we know, representative government elected by all citizens, might not exist. The Roman Republic was never truly democratic. It was an oligarchy where the Senate held power. Would that Senate ever voluntarily give up control? The Enlightenment, that movement in the 1700s that gave us ideas like individual rights, freedom of speech, and separation of church and state, happened in our world partly because thinkers could question authority in fragmented European kingdoms, but in a unified Rome, where the state controls education, media, and knowledge. Do those ideas ever emerge? Maybe. Maybe Rome evolves into something more free over time, or maybe it becomes the most efficient authoritarian state ever built. Think about it. Government with 2,500 years of institutional knowledge, AI surveillance systems built on algorithms refined over centuries, A military that's never lost a major conflict, because it's never faced a true peer competitor. Who decides what gets invented in this world? Who decides what knowledge is dangerous? In our timeline, progress often came from outsiders. Galileo defied the church. The American Revolution rejected monarchy. The internet was built by academics and hackers, not governments. But in a world where one institution has monopolized progress for 2,500 years, maybe they're on Mars, but maybe they're also living under a system that makes freedom real, chaotic, unpredictable freedom impossible. So which world is better? Ours, where we spent 1,000 years forgetting how to build aqueducts, but eventually created jazz democracy and the concept of universal human rights. Or theirs, where humanity never fractured, never regressed, but also never questioned whether an empire should rule forever? I don't know the answer, but I know this. Every time Rome could have survived, it chose not to adapt. And when it finally collapsed, the world that emerged was messier, bloodier, and more chaotic. But it was also freer. History happened the way it did for a reason. Every collapse forced humanity to rebuild from scratch, to rethink power, to imagine something different. Rome fell, and in its absence, we built something Rome never could. A world where empires fall, but somewhere in another timeline, Rome still stands. And they're looking at our world, at our nations, our conflicts, our fragmented mess of languages and borders and ideologies. And they're wondering, what if we never fell?